Thank you very much, Professor Egan and Kim Yeon-chun and rest of the GSIS people in SNU. And thanks again for joining me today for my lecture here. So I gotta say, I looked up actually today, and it was 18 years ago when I had my last lecture in English. When I was in college, I was TF for my computer science class, CS 141 at Harvard. So I'm a computer science guy. I've never been a political science guy or anything like that. So I'm not very familiar with the terminologies and the kind of thinkings here used in GSIS, but I'll try to adapt to it, and please be my guest. So today I'm going to talk about the challenges that we are facing in the future, and so I call it an irresistible future that's coming through. And first, in the first part of the lecture, I'm going to try to evaluate what has been going on with Korean politics for the past few years. And in the later half, I'm going to be talking about the actual challenges that we're going to have to face in the near future. So let me just mention, so whenever I come to SNU, I always think about this interesting poll you conducted in SNU Life every year. This poll lasted for a few years, and I remember the poll results from in 2020. I remember the numbers were, so the question was, who is the most, who is the alumni that you're very proud of? And you had to name a few. And interestingly, back then in 2020, 89% of the students in SNU answered Prosecutor Yoon Suk-yeol. It's the most proud alumni of Seoul National University. So, and next question was, who is the most shameful alumni of SNU? And interestingly, the answer was your professor, Joe of the law department. Yeah, it was he was number one by a big margin. So that's just 4 years ago, and let's see how things have changed. And as you can see, you guys are getting good education, but you guys are not always making the best decisions, you know, in terms of decision making. So, and I gotta admit that I'm no better than that, you know. I actually helped Yoon become the president, and I'm now in a position kicked out by Yoon, and yeah. I just started my own party, and I somehow got elected as a member of an opposition party, so I'm no better than you, so let's start from the beginning here. So, yeah, so, 18 years have passed since I gave my last lecture in English, so that was in year 2006. I was teaching computer science, and here's my name here. So, some people still doubt the fact that I graduated from Harvard, so I put that on the screen. Just for information. So I'm going to start off by saying, so basically in Korean politics, for the past 7 decades, it's been a confrontation between two sides. One, the guys who are descendants of the glories of industrialization. And second, the guys who are descendants of the glories of democratization. So those were the two factions actually who were confronting in Korean politics. So if you look at the industrialization party, we call them the conservatives in Korea. And so they made Park Chung-hee a hero of their own. And eventually, up to this date, people who are voting for the conservative party believes that voting for the ruling party, the conservatives, means that we are looking forward to a better economic status. And on the other side, some people who made Kim Dae-jung the hero, namely the DP, the Democratic Party, when people are voting for that party, that means that they look for a more liberal nation. So that's a big gap here, but we've been choosing from these two for the past 6 or 7 decades. So now, let's see what's coming from. So if you look back 2 years ago, there was this presidential election, and you know that President Yoon Suk-yeol was the candidate for the Conservatives, and Mr. Lee Jae-myung was the candidate for the Minju Party, the DP. And if you look at those two candidates, things have changed. So I told you, like, the conservatives in Korea definitely roots from the glories of the industrialization era. But apparently you know so much about Mr. Yoon that Yoon, in his life, has never done anything for industrialization. You can write his CV. Anyone in Korea can write his CV. He attended SNU, and he graduated, and he took the exam 9 times to become a prosecutor. And he worked as a prosecutor for 26 years, and then his next job was to be the president. So his CV is so simple and clear. So within his CV, you don't see any sign of participating in industrialization process. So this is quite a challenge for the conservatives, because the past president from the Conservative Party, Park Geun-hye, she was at least the daughter of the hero, Park Chung-hee. But Yoon Suk-yeol has no such background. So at the same time, if you look at Mr. Lee Jae-myung, well, he was a very good mayor of Seongnam City, and he was a good governor of Gyeonggi Province, but I gotta say, he has no sign of participating in any sort of democratization movement. So it was quite like a different election from past election. Say, the candidate from the Conservative Party has no connection to industrialization. Candidate from the Minju Party has no connection to democratization process. If you look at President Moon Jae-in, he himself was a very active member in the democratization process, and he was a friend of Roh Moo-hyun, of course. So this was a challenge for the Minju Party also. So we are trying to see, so what's coming from, you know? What's the next agenda that we have to chase? Because we Koreans do know that industrialization and democratization may not be such a big issue in the future. Because we have achieved our democracy and we have achieved our industrialization to some extent. So I'm in the process of seeking what's coming from. So please join me with the discussion today, because I think we are currently, we are looking for such agenda together as a whole, the society. So it's a simple question: what do the people want in Korea currently? So our president, Mr. Yoon, now has come up with some ideas. Let's see. So 2 months after his inauguration, Mr. Yoon decided that people demanded minseng. I don't know how to translate into English, but he was really looking into Korean people's actual demands in life, you know. That's what Mr. Yoon was looking for. That's two months after inauguration. But, oh, there's a typo there. But something happened to him within a year. Say, 15 months after inauguration. He pointed out, okay, ideology is like the key thing we have to pursue. That's the remark he made 15 months after inauguration. So I don't know what he's thinking, because it's usually the other way around. People value actual problems in life over ideology, usually. But so he, after a year of his presidency, decided that he's going to shift towards ideology. So he's definitely in a trauma, I think, of some sort. But, well, after losing this general election last month, then he decided that he's going to turn back to problem in public life. So I was like, okay, this guy's in a real disorder of some sort, I think. So we are at this status right now. And yeah, so, and Mr. Yoon, when he was craving for this ideology thing, then he coined this term, so-called the communist totalitarianism. He said, that's like the biggest threat to Korea right now. So I was in politics for 12 years, but I didn't agree so, nor did I know what that meant, you know? Well, Korean public didn't know what he has to say about that, so a very brave student had to ask government authority what that meant. So someone went up to, I think it was the National Institute of the Korean Language, and someone posted the question saying, so what's the meaning of communist totalitarianism? And so this guy at this National Institute had to think about it for 3 days, and then he finally came up with an answer saying, that terminology is not in our dictionary, so we cannot tell you what it means. So our president was trying to tell the public that we have to pursue an ideology which is not even in the dictionary. So we are at a serious stake right now. So I really don't believe that it's an imminent threat to us at this point. So I'm going to try to name a few actual threats that's coming to us right now. Oh, and let me point out one more thing. So you remember Yoon visited the United States last year, and so he gave the speech in front of the Congress, and he sang a song in front of the executives in the U.S. And I was so surprised because before he went to the U.S., I told the media in Korea, I hope that please Yoon should not just thank the Americans for helping us in the Korean War and say nothing else. And Yoon actually did so, you know. He went to the Congress and he said, thank you, America. Thank you for sending your troops to Korea. And that was it. Yeah, if you look at the script, that was it. So I was so surprised because, I mean, the way we look at diplomacy and the way we think about ourselves has changed among our generation. And Yoon failed to adapt to it as a president. So let me just point out a few things out. Yeah, and of course the students from SNU, they liked it so much the fact that he gave the speech in English. Yeah, that was it. But, well, I was so surprised because if I were to be in that position, giving a speech to the US Congress, then I would think it's a very good opportunity to tell them what we demand. Because from my experience in the US, people in the US don't really care much about Korea. Yeah, so I bet most of the members of the Assembly or Congress there would really want to hear what the Korean president has to say. So if I were there, I would mention that Korea, of course we thank you guys for helping us in the Korean War, but at the same time, I would mention to them that we also did a lot of things to participate in your security interests, namely the Vietnam War and maybe our efforts in the Gulf War, and maybe our efforts in the war against terrorism, and at the same time, our efforts in Ukraine. I would have mentioned those, and I would have told them then. So we participated in the security interests of the US, so we demand that we obtain a special status in terms of trade and economy. That would have been my message that I wanted to deliver to, I would have delivered to the congressman there, but Yoon totally forgot about it, and he just mentioned, thank you, America, we thank you for it. That's the message we've been giving to the United States for the past 6 decades, and I think we need to upgrade to that. So Yoon really failed to come up with those kind of new messages there. And, well, after he came back from the United States, I told the media, well, maybe he said those things in front of the public, but maybe underneath the cover, he would have demanded something else. When I mentioned that, because, well, in my personal talks with President Yoon, he was so much into obtaining our ability to get a nuclear-propelled submarine. So maybe he said something undercover to the US officials, demanding them to relieve some of the sanctions which they have on us for nuclear reprocessing and those kind of stuff. But, well, later I heard from some of the US officials saying there was no such clear demand on that. So I was like, so what was Yoon actually demanding to the United States when he was singing in front of them? So here's the thing with the U.S. and the U.S.-Korea relationship. So I think, so if you look back in the history of Korea, Korean diplomacy could be abbreviated into a simple term, say, 사대주의. 사대주의 means in our relationship between China and us, so if we participate in some of the security interests of China, then China would grant us some economical benefits to us. That's the kind of system that worked in East Asia for centuries. So for us Koreans, the US-Korea relationship had worked like that for quite a while, for past 6 or 7 decades. But apparently after President Trump took office, things have changed. So even though we participate most of the time for the security interests of the United States, it doesn't mean that we have guaranteed economical benefits that we enjoyed for the past 6 or 7 decades. So we know that things have changed, which means that, well, it didn't change after President Biden got elected also. So it doesn't really matter which party the US president is from. No matter it's Biden or no matter it's Trump, they really now have to bring their factories back to their homeland, and they have to bring Samsung and TSMC to the United States to create jobs in the US. So things have changed. So our president should be more strict about these issues and have to tell the congressmen there in the US that we demand these things. But Yoon failed to do so. So I was really upset about the results from the summit meetings. So Yoon is not adapting to these changes that the Korean younger generation is demanding, I think. So, and if you look at the history of Korean public thinking about foreign countries, so I would have to mention that it changes really abruptly. So back in 1960s and 70s, you all know that it was a period of anti-communism. But in the 1990s and in somewhere around the year 2000, there was a period when anti-Americanism was in place in Korea. So if you look at the historical events, so Korean War, of course there was anti-communism. But after the Korean War, there came a period where there was anti-American movement there. The American people didn't understand why, like this car accident caused the Korean public to turn anti-American, but it was like that in year 2000 and so. And you all remember how the beef import issue has been big in Korea. So there's been a period of anti-Americanism in, say, 15 years ago. And after that came, so now 70 or 80% of the Korean younger generation do not like what the Chinese are doing to us. So things change really rapidly here in Korea. So I think it's very important for the Korea-US relationship to advance in a way that the Korean younger generation can understand and can actually support, because Korean younger generations are feeling that this challenge is coming up front to us. So we really need to make these changes. And I can say that the reason 78% of the Korean younger generation dislike China is pretty clear, because China has failed to move up the steps that they should have, which matches their economic prosperity. So mainly I think it was issues with regards to the THAAD missile battery issue back in 2018 it was, I think, when the US and Korea decided to deploy THAAD missile batteries to Korea. The Chinese people shut down our businesses in China, and the Korean younger generation were responding. So that is a completely defensive measure. And why is China responding in such a way? Because we all know that THAAD is not a ballistic missile. It's a missile to shoot down ballistic missiles. So it's a completely defensive measure against North Korean threats. And North Korean nuclear threat and ballistic missile threat is an imminent threat to the South Koreans. And why is the Chinese blaming the U.S. on this? And why are the Chinese people trying to not let us install these missile batteries and radars? So that was the reasonable question that the Korean younger generation started. So, and the Chinese people failed to respond to it. So since then, the Korean younger generation started to know that China is really not trying to alleviate the situation here in the Korean Peninsula. So things have changed since then. So Korean younger generation had started to lean more towards the westernized countries, and so Korean people had started deviating from the communist powers or the authoritarian powers. So things are changing, and the foreign countries should know that the younger generations are really crisp and clear on these kind of issues. So they can tell who's our friends and who's not. So here's the things. And so, well, you all know that President Yoon recently has been pushing towards these so-called reforms of his own. And we know it's coming to a disaster in every sector. Say, first of all, so he calls these reforms are for the future generation. But I would point out, almost none of the future generation agree to the ideas that he's bringing up. So-called these educational reform. Well, when you say educational reform, I expected something bigger than just having the National Tax Service search after the earnings of the private tutors there, but he did it. Yeah, the National Tax Service has been searching accounts of the famous instructors in the private education sector. So, yeah, we don't call those kind of things reform, but Yoon is going in that direction, so I'm apparently disappointed in that sector. But, well, I have to point out that is the Democratic Party doing any better? That's the thing I have to point out, because, well, if you look back 2 years ago, all the things that came out in the election was a comedy of some sort. If you look at, I mean, it's 2 years ago, but any of you here remember what is the most important economic policy announced by those two candidates? Do you remember any of the economic policies they announced? I personally don't remember anything about their promises or, yeah. Do you remember any of the educational policies or promises that they made? No, I don't remember any of them. So 2 years ago, the election was only about who is going to prison. That was the main thing they thought about, and it's still ongoing. So it's quite disastrous, but let's look at Mr. Lee Jae-myung's ideas then. Yeah. So one thing I was disappointed about the members of the Democratic Party was that, so you know how I mentioned like the DP, the Minju Party is rooting on the glories of the democratization process back in 1980s and 1990s. But I was disappointed by the fact that in year 2019, when this democratization movement broke out in Hong Kong, so I actually went there to Hong Kong and see what was going on. And I could see that it was a really peaceful protest in the beginning. And the Chinese riot police came in and they just cracked down all these demonstrations. And so I was there standing, so I was witnessing all these stuff, and I acted like one of those in May 18th in 1980. one of those foreigners there witnessing and telling the media what was going on. So I put those photos and videos on my Facebook of what was going on. And I came back to Korea, and then I was a member of the 바른미래 Party, and I told the members of the Democratic Party, so the people of Hong Kong are at risk right now. And when I visited in Hong Kong, some of them were singing the songs from the May 18th Gwangju democratization movement. They translated the song to Cantonese, and they were singing the song. So for me, it almost sounded like they were calling for help, you know. And so I told the guys in our Congress saying that we should definitely help them, because I mean, after the Gwangju massacre, wasn't the DP always saying that Gwangju democratization movement had to be had to be a sacred thing that we all have to pursue, the kind of thinking there. And the thing here is that the DP guys then responded to me, the Minju Party guys responded to me saying that, oh, we cannot do that because of our national interest. So I responded to them saying like, well, back in 1980, if the citizens of Gwangju were calling help overseas, if some other nation responded, we cannot do so because of our national interest, wouldn't that have disappointed the people of Gwangju? Let's think about it. And the DP guys just refused to make give any messages to the people of Hong Kong. So because they were so afraid that China would put pressure on us, on us. So that's the kind of dilemma that we have had there, but also disappointed because throughout the past 30 years, the people in Minju Party always glorified the Gwangju democratization movement. And they've proven that it was only for their domestic politics, because they always wanted to just glorify the Gwangju democratization movement because they knew that the conservatives were in a different position. So, I mean, that's what disappointed me at that point. And what I witnessed in Hong Kong, the situation was really severe. And, well, I was really dissatisfied and disappointed by the fact that none of the Korean politicians, except for me actually, made the message to support the democratization movement back there in Hong Kong. And, well, here's the interesting thing. So, I asked the people of Hong Kong, so where did you learn to protest like this in the streets and also? And they told me, they remember in year 2000 or so, there was this WTO meeting in Hong Kong, and there were these people from Korean Farmers Union who participated in this anti-WTO globalization protest. And back then, the people of Hong Kong saw how the Korean Farmers Union protested, and they just mimicked the things that they did. And some of the things the Korean Farmers Union did in year 2000 in this anti-WTO globalization protest was jumping into the ocean and bowing in the street. And so, I mean, here's the thing. So in East Asia, at least Korean democracy or the way they protest was becoming a model for other countries and other people. And here's another thing. So some of the things that came up in the election 2 years ago, Mr. Lee Jae-myung made a lot of interesting promises, but one of the stupid things that he mentioned was that he was going to remove the Gimpo airport. And he said that's possible because in a few years, passenger planes will take off vertically and land vertically. And so I had to respond, so if you remove the Gimpo Airport from Seoul, then how are we going to travel to Jeju? And Mr. Lee Jae-myung failed to respond to it, and that's why he came up with the idea of vertically taking off and vertically landing. And of course, Boeing and Airbus responded that they have no such plan to make vertically taking off and vertically landing passenger aircraft in the near future. So, Korean politics, we need some serious things to do here because, and let's talk about the economic ideas of Mr. Lee Jae-myung. So you all know that Mr. Lee Jae-myung is a big fan of this whole idea of universal basic income, the UBI, and the regional currencies. He's a very big fan of those two ideas. And one of the diagrams that describe his economical policy is this diagram. And if you look at this diagram, it says, in the bottom it says, no money has been put into this town or village, but this money circulated through these shops, and now our economy is in a better status. This is what UBI does, and I couldn't understand a single thing in that cycle, but that's the kind of economic ideas that our presidential candidate had. So Korean politics is at a really serious status right now. So let's see what the real threats are from now on. Oh, and this is about let's just skip this one. So winter is coming, so we are at a very a serious status right now, and let's name a few things that you might want to know. You would have not seen these on the media, but let's see. So are we making preparation for the irresistible future threats? Let's see. So did any one of you hear about the upcoming gender ratio problem or threat that we are facing here? So here's this simple statistic saying that average age difference between Korean male and female in their first marriage is 2.9 or 2.8. Korean male tend to marry female who's 2.8 years or 2.9 years younger than them. You know, that's because of the mandatory military service that we have. And, well, then, which means that men are likely to marry women 3 years younger than them. And if you look at the statistics now, so this is the birth count for every single year by gender. And see, in year 2000, anyone of you here were born in year 2000? Any one of you?